Here's Chapter 2 of Weavers of Light. Rory opened his eyes. Adima was kneeling next to him, really filling her face as he shook his head to focus it. Billy was standing with James, looking down at him. "You okay?" What happened?" moaned Rory. "Dunno, dude," replied Billy. "One minute the old guy was standing there, next minute he was gone, you were on the ground." Rory started to push himself up. "I don't know if you should move," said James. "I'm not going to just lay here. What if something else plans on showing up?" "You have a point," said Adima, helping him sit up. Rory realized he was squeezing something so tight in his left hand it was digging into his palm. He opened his fingers and stared. In the light of the moon he could see it was the stone that Balaha had been wearing around his neck. There were carvings in each corner and a hole in the middle. Adima looked at the stone and back at Rory. She reached for the stone. "What's this?" Taking it, she studied it closely. "Looks old." Billy grinned. "Nailed it, Adima. Of course, most rocks are pretty old." Adima shot him a dirty look. "The carvings, dummy." She cocked her head, looking at Rory closely. "What happened to you, Rory? Something's up." Rory knew if he told them there was no turning back. He shook his head. "Probably nothing. I mean, it must have just been a Billy stopped him. "Rory, you are the world's worst liar. There's something you aren't saying. Spill it." Rory sighed, started slowly, and it all poured out. Afterwards, he looked around. James looked, as usual, like he was calculating something in his head. Billy was grinning like it was Christmas. "Someone's yanking your chain, but it's a great yank. Think how much trouble they went to. I've got to see this." James nodded. "We all saw the guy, then he was gone. If it's a prank, it's a good one." Rory was stunned. "If? You mean Mr. Scientist doesn't think I'm nuts?" James smiled and shook his head. "Never make a decision without considering all the possibilities. What do you think, Adima?" "We need more information," she declared. "If he wanted us dead, he could have let that cloud thing finish us." Billy nodded. "Totally. We were screwed. Let's see how it plays." Adima nodded. "But what do we do?" She handed the stone back to Rory. "Did he say what you were supposed to do with it?" Rory shook his head. "He just said we had to state our intention." "Well, maybe you should ask your dad," suggested James. "He's an archaeologist. He might know something about the carvings, and if they tell you what to do." Billy said, "Maybe you should rub it, like Aladdin and the lamp." Adima shook her head. "It can't be just one of us. It has to be something we all do, to say we're willing to hear him out." "Maybe you should bark like dogs and roll around in the dust," came a voice from near the fire. "Can it, Billy?" scolded Adima. "That wasn't me." "Look," said James, pointing toward the fire pit. Above the fire, a small ball of smoke shimmered. "Did you use wet wood? The fire shouldn't be smoking that much." Suddenly he looked very worried. "Maybe it's another one of those cloud things." Adima shook her head. "Nah, that thing came pouring out like it just couldn't wait to get us. This is hanging there." Rory got up and went to the fire pit, waving his hand through the ball of smoke. "It isn't smoke from the wood. Look, it doesn't move." "Watch where you're putting your hand, youngster." The voice came from the center of the ball, which quickly expanded into the old man they had seen before. Balaha was grinning. "I wish I had a camera. You little Belkas look like you've seen a ghost." "Well, isn't that what you are? A ghost or something?" "Like it?" asked Adima reasonably. "It's got to be some kind of trick." Billy walked around Balaha looking carefully. "Someone is waiting to make us all do something totally embarrassing, then laugh their butts off." Balaha sighed. "You always were a difficult one to convince, Tinglin. Even when you were an old man, you wouldn't believe a wolf was a wolf till it chewed your leg off." "My name's Billy, and what do you mean when I was an old man?" "Later on that. Let's just say I've known you all for a long time in a lot of places that you don't remember yet. So I know that right now, each one of you is trying really hard to come up with a story that explains why you didn't just see an old man pop out of a ball of smoke, right?" Rory was relieved that the others were seeing whatever it was. Billy looked totally suspicious. Adima seemed content to see how it played out. James's mouth was hanging wide open, and his eyes were filled with panic. Belaka looked at James and spoke soothingly. Don't you go crazy yet, Pekeme. You start yelling and running around, you'll never find out what's going on. It was exactly the right thing to say. James could never stand to leave a puzzle unsolved. He didn't say anything, but stopped looking like he was about to make a run for the hills. Belka said, Listen, hombres, this is how it goes. There are a lot of things you need to do and even more you need to learn. If you get it wrong, the world ends. So do you. He slapped his hands together like he was crushing a mosquito. That quick. He held up a hand to stop both Billy and Tima's questions. I'll explain, but we don't have much time. So first off, you have to believe I'm not blowing smoke. He looked down at his body, which still wasn't completely formed and was faintly glowing in the moonlight, and grinned. Well, I guess I am blowing smoke in a way. You're blowing something, said Billy. Belaka glared at him. You all have to see what the problem is. We're going to take a little trip. You want to back out afterwards? You have that option, but first you have to see the what and the why. Where are we going? Asked Rory. Not far. You might even recognize it. Who's driving? Asked Billy. Can you pull a car out of that fire too? No driving. We aren't going in the body. It's about energy. We'll travel the web. Web? Asked Tima. You'll see. You won't have to take it on faith for long. This once, do what I say. Will you grant me that? They looked at each other, considering. Look, I blew away the beastie just a little while ago. Now I just appeared in a ball of smoke. That's got to count for something. Your bodies will never leave this spot. Promise. So what's there to lose? Rory nodded. Tima looked thoughtful and nodded too. James gritted his teeth. I'm in. Billy shrugged. Sure, knock yourself out. If this is a trick, it's a good one. Belaka grinned. It's a great ride, I promise. Now, everyone sit around the stone, each one of you facing a corner, and touch that corner with a finger. They followed his instructions. Belaka faded into a glowing ball and floated above the stone. Okay, pay attention and hold on to the rings. What rings? Shouted James. He had to shout because a roaring filled the hole. It sounded like a hurricane was blowing in, but not a grain of sand was moving. A shimmering mist filled the air, blocking out the stars. You'll see, the roaring increased, and Rory felt a pull on his hair. The ground began to shake, and Belaka began to rise, pulling them up off the ground. As he did, the stone grew. From each corner, a large ring extended. Belaka shouted, Hold on tight, it's time to go web riding, and I don't want to try and find you if you let go. They rose through the swirling, shimmering mist until, like an airplane breaking through the clouds, they cleared the haze and saw stretched out in every direction, like a fishnet made of starfire, pulsing threads of light. Belaka said, Welcome to the real world, Pelkas. Let's go for a ride. That's the end of Chapter 2.